Did you know only 5 new nuclear reactors have come online in the U.S. in over, 3 decades?
Yeah, that's a pretty striking number.
And it's been well over 15 years since a major nuclear plant even started construction. So that really sets the stage for what we're diving into today. New York's really ambitious plan for the nation's first major nuclear facility in almost 20 years.
It's a big deal.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to unpack this New Era Begins initiative. We're going to look at the history, the context, the energy challenges driving it, the actual project details, and what it could mean, not just for New York, but maybe for the whole country.
Right.
And we're drawing on some detailed reports, including one actually called New York's Nuclear Power Initiative. A new era begins.
And it's important to remember, this isn't just, some dry policy talk. The stakes are incredibly high here.
How so?
Well, this project really touches on the future of high-tech manufacturing, creating good, skilled jobs, and hitting some pretty serious environmental goals. It all kind of comes together. So understanding this deep dive, it really gives you, the listener, a clearer picture of how one state's big bet could reshape our energy future for a long, long time. It affects everything from, say, industrial competition to our carbon footprint.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. To really get why New York's move is so ambitious, we need to look back a bit at nuclear power's recent history in the U.S.
Yeah, that context is key.
People often call it the 30-year freeze. Basically, the last big wave of building nuclear plants here ended way back in 1991.
That long ago, yeah.
And then between 2000 and, say, 2012, U.S. nuclear capacity pretty much just flatlined. It didn't grow, even while other countries were busy building more.
Stagnation, really.
And it gets even more stark after that. Since 2012, several U.S. plants have actually shut down, been retired. So our total nuclear capacity actually went down.
Right. We lost ground.
So, yeah, only 5 new reactors online in over 30 years.
Given that whole history of slowing down, even shrinking, why is New York making this huge push now? What changed? Well, what's fascinating here is that New York is facing a really clear immediate challenge. It's this growing demand for power. And it mirrors what a lot of other regions are starting to see, too.
Okay, so what's driving that demand?
It's a few things, really. First, you've got just immense tech growth. Think about companies like Micron doing advanced manufacturing.
Right, chip fabs and things like that.
Exactly. And also the explosion of artificial intelligence AI data centers. These aren't just like slightly bigger electricity users. They need truly enormous amounts of power.
Constant power too, right?
Constant and highly reliable. The sheer computing power needed for AI is just, it's off the charts and it can't be interrupted.
Okay, so tech growth is one big piece. What else?
Second, you have ongoing plant closures. A lot of older fossil fuel plants are being retired. Now, that's good for long-term climate goals, obviously.
Sure.
But right now, it's creating these critical gaps in energy supply. You take power plants offline, you need to replace that power somehow.
Makes sense.
And third, that leads directly to grid strain. You add these massive new industrial demands, especially from tech, onto an existing electricity grid. Well, it pushes that infrastructure to its absolute limit, sometimes beyond what it was even designed for. So this isn't just New York's problem. It's really a snapshot of the kind of intense energy challenges lots of places are grappling with now.
So if tech growth is such a big driver and we're closing fossil fuel plants, could renewables like wind and solar fill that gap? Or is there something specific about nuclear that fits this particular need?
That's a really critical question. Renewables are absolutely vital, right? We need them for decarbonization.
Yeah.
But the challenge is intermittency.
Meaning they don't run all the time.
Exactly. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. But high-tech manufacturing, especially things like semiconductor production, they need power that is absolutely uninterruptible. 2047, 365, no exceptions. And AI data centers, same thing. They need constant, very dense power loads. Large-scale nuclear can provide that reliably, that baseload power, without the carbon emissions you get from fossil fuels.
Ah, okay. So it's that combination of reliability and being carbon-free.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could argue nuclear is kind of uniquely suited for that consistent high-capacity demand from these new industries.
Okay, so let's zero in then on what New York is actually proposing, because this isn't just like a small test reactor or something.
No, definitely not. We're not talking about the small modular reactors or SMRs that get a lot of buzz, those smaller sort of prefab units. This is different.
Right. This is a significant, large-scale new facility they're planning The key spec is a minimum 1 gigawatt capacity.
Which is substantial.
Yeah, it really is. That's a huge addition to New York's baseload power. Enough, they estimate, for about 1 million homes. And the plan is to locate it somewhere upstate.
Oh.
And they're not just, picking a spot randomly. The locations are being chosen very specifically based on workforce availability.
Meaning people are there to do the jobs.
Right. Or they can be trained.
Mhm.
Also, community receptivity, which is huge for a project like this. You need local buy-in.
Absolutely crucial.
And maybe, most importantly, technically speaking, these sites need to have grid-ready connection points. You need to be able to plug this new power source into the existing network smoothly.
Makes sense. Needs to integrate.
But building something this massive, it takes years. What does that actually mean for the communities where it happens? Beyond just getting electricity down the line.
Yeah. Oh, if we look at the bigger picture, the economic and workforce impact is really a central piece of this whole initiative. It's not just about power.
Okay, like what kind of impact?
Well, we can actually put some numbers on it. During the construction phase, which would take multiple years,
Right.
the project is expected to create something like 1,600 temporary construction jobs. And these are generally well-paying, skilled jobs that inject money right into the local area.
Okay, 1,600 temporary. What about long-term?
That's the next phase. Once the plant is actually up and running, the projection shifts to about 1,200 permanent, high-skilled jobs.
High-skilled meaning?
Meaning engineers, operators, technicians, security. These are career-level positions, jobs that can support families for decades, not just temporary roles.
Gotcha.
And the overall economic boost, when you factor everything in local businesses, supply chains, all that is estimated to be over $1 billion for upstate communities.
Wow, $1 billion plus.
Yeah. And it's not just about the direct jobs at the plant itself. There's this broader economic vision. The hope is that having this reliable, clean power source will act like a magnet.
A magnet
for attracting more tech companies, more AI development, more advanced manufacturing to New York, especially upstate, areas that could really use that kind of economic revitalization.
Because they need that specific kind of power.
Exactly. They need loads of power, but critically, it has to be uninterruptible and increasingly clean power. Nuclear provides that. That predictability is a massive draw for any high-tech company that absolutely cannot afford even a momentary power glitch.
Right.
So you really have to think about the ripple effect. Major infrastructure like this, it impacts everything locally: housing, retail, schools, other services. It can really transform a region.
Those numbers are definitely impressive. $1 billion, thousands of jobs. But are there potential downsides or economic risks for these communities too? A project this big and long.
Oh, absolutely. Any project on this scale has risks. For the communities, one potential concern is always the boom and bust cycle you can get with construction.
Right, the jobs are temporary.
They are. But the plan seems to recognize that by emphasizing the long-term permanent jobs and trying to attract those other industries to create sustained growth, not just a short-term boom.
Right.
There's also the potential, if it's not managed really well, for strain on local infrastructure during that busy construction phase: roads, housing, services.
But the fact that they're specifically looking for sites with community receptivity suggests they're trying to get ahead of those issues and work with the locals. The whole economic vision seems designed to try and smooth out those potential downsides by focusing on long-term benefits.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we have to talk about the concerns, right? The sort of elephant in the room whenever nuclear power comes up.
Inevitable, yeah.
When you talk about the safety, cost, and environmental debate, there's historical baggage there, things people immediately think of.
Definitely.
Things like, potential safety risks, the 3 Mile Island, or Chernobyl comparisons, however outdated. And the big one, what do you do with the nuclear waste? That's always a challenge.
The waste issue is perennial, yes.
Then there's the cost factor. Historically, large nuclear projects have sometimes had massive cost overruns. People worry if it's actually economically viable. And the timelines they take so long to build.
True, the timelines are significant. And of course, you often have environmental groups who are strongly opposed for various reasons, from waste to safety to cost.
Right. All valid points based on historical experience.
However, Governor Hochul, who's pushing this, has addressed these concerns directly. She keeps emphasizing 3 things: reliability, affordability, and sustainability. Those are the main goals she stated.
Right.
And crucially, she also points out that the modern nuclear designs they'd be looking at are different. They specifically address many of those historical worries about safety and efficiency.
That's a key point. The technology has evolved. Modern designs often incorporate things like passive safety systems,
Me.
meaning they rely on natural forces like gravity or convection to cool the reactor down in an emergency rather than complex electrical systems that could fail. They're designed to be inherently safer and simpler.
Interesting. But even with better designs, how do they actually get this built? You mentioned the long timelines, but what about just getting permission? The regulatory hurdles must be huge.
Oh, they are. That raises the really important practical question of the permitting and technical hurdles. It's a major challenge.
How long does that usually take?
Well, the main federal approval process goes through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. And just getting the permits from them, that can often take anywhere from 5 to 10 years.
Wow, 5 to 10 years just for paperwork.
Essentially, yeah. It's incredibly thorough for obvious reasons, but it's not a fast process, not by any stretch.
Okay, so that's a long lead time before you even break ground.
Exactly. Now, there is a bit of maybe hope on that front. There are some new federal initiatives trying to streamline and maybe fast track some of these regulatory steps. There's a recognition that we need new clean energy sources faster.
So maybe not quite 10 years in the future.
Maybe. We'll see how effective those efforts are. Then, regarding the technology itself, they'll be looking at advanced zero-emission designs. These have to meet incredibly strict safety standards, as we discussed. And then, even after you get all the approvals, the actual physical construction of a facility this complex takes another, say, 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so best case scenario, you're still looking at what, maybe a decade from serious planning to actually generating power.
Easily. It's a very long-term commitment. There's no way around that.
Okay. Despite those long timelines, those hurdles, it is interesting to see the kind of support nuclear powers are getting now, especially from industry.
Yeah, the industry and tech sector support is pretty robust, particularly for a project like this one in New York.
We mentioned Micron earlier, the chip maker. They, along with Global Foundries, another big one, have specifically endorsed this New York plan.
Right. And why?
Because, as you said, they need that incredibly reliable, stable power for making semiconductors. They just cannot afford outages or even fluctuations. It ruins the product.
Consistency is everything for them.
And it's not just happening in New York. You see tech giants like Google and Microsoft actively putting money into next-gen nuclear projects elsewhere.
Interesting. So it's broader than just this one state.
Yeah, it shows pretty broad industry confidence, or at least interest, in nuclear as a potential solution for their huge energy needs, especially, again, AI computing facilities.
Right, the AI power demand again.
It's massive, needs to be stable, and nuclear can provide that without carbon emissions, so it kind of ticks both boxes, energy security and climate goals.
A powerful combination for those industries.
So, okay, stepping back then, we have New York making this bold move, driven by tech growth and plant closures, promising jobs, facing hurdles, but getting industry support. What does this all mean for the bigger picture, for energy in the U.S. generally?
Yeah, zooming out to the national implications. What this means for U.S. nuclear power could actually be profound.
How so?
Well, first, New York's project, if it moves forward successfully, could really demonstrate leadership. It might act as a trigger, potentially sparking a wider nationwide nuclear renaissance after decades of, well, not much happening.
Kind of proving it can be done again.
Exactly, breaking that long freeze. Second, it could kickstart an industry revival. You know, after so many years of decline, we've lost some of the supply chains, the specialized workforce, the expertise needed to build and run these plants.
Right, that capability needs rebuilding.
A project like this could begin to rebuild all of that, bring back those skills, those manufacturing capabilities. Third, it really highlights the potential of public-private partnerships.
Government and industry working together.
Yes. Building a nuclear plant is incredibly expensive. This project shows how collaboration between the state and private companies can create new ways to fund these massive capital-intensive projects. That could be a model for other places.
Okay.
And finally, and maybe most importantly in the long run, it has the real potential to reverse that trend we talked about, the years of declining U.S. nuclear generation capacity. It could put us back on a path toward more energy independence and cleaner electricity production.
So, beyond the obvious players like tech and manufacturing, are there other industries or sectors you think are watching New York really closely right now, kind of as a test case for their own energy future.
Oh, absolutely. Think about industries that are really sensitive to long-term, stable energy prices. Things like advanced materials production, pharmaceuticals, even some parts of the agricultural sector that rely on heavy processing.
Okay, why them specifically?
Because predictable, clean energy costs are a huge factor when companies decide where to invest billions of dollars and build new facilities for the long haul.
Right, they need that certainty.
Exactly. If New York pulls this off, if they can offer that kind of reliable, carbon-free energy backbone, it sends a powerful signal. It provides a template other states might try to copy to attract those same kinds of high-value, energy-intensive industries. They're definitely watching.
Okay, so let's try to quickly recap then. New York is making a really high-stakes bet here on nuclear power.
High stakes, high reward, potentially.
Yeah, the goal is multifaceted. Bolster energy independence, help meet some tough climate targets on emissions, drive economic growth upstate, and crucially, provide the power needed for the tech sector to keep growing.
It ties a lot of big priorities together.
And the next step, apparently, is the state announcing specific potential locations for the plant. And we're hearing that upstate communities are already showing quite a bit of interest, which is definitely a positive sign for getting something like this moving.
That local buy-in will be critical as things progress.
Absolutely.
You know, thinking about it, this really could be the start of that new era for American nuclear power that the report title talks about.
It feels like a potential turning point.
It does, and it makes you think, doesn't it? Consider just for a moment how the success or maybe the failure of this single ambitious project in New York,
Yeah.
how that might end up defining U.S. energy strategy for decades.
Yeah.
And what that could mean down the line for your own energy landscape, where your power comes from, how much it costs, how clean it is. It really prompts the question. What stands out to you most about this potential shift and what it could all imply?